I'm Sumi Somaskanda. It's good to have you with us. A last goodbye to George Floyd. The black man whose death ignited global protests against racism and police brutality will be buried today in Houston, his hometown. Largely unknown in life, Floyd's killing 2 weeks ago after a police officer knelt on his neck now appears to be a turning point in American history.
Under a scorching Texas sky, thousands queued for hours to enter the church where George Floyd's body lay. A last chance for the public to pay their respects to the man whose death has become a rallying cry against racism around the globe. The public viewing was held in Houston, the city where Floyd grew up.
Well, this is an important time in our world, and I feel that it is necessary for me to be here. Number one, as a human being, for the human race, and then me being an African-American man, I wouldn't miss this for the world.
White people have the luxury of assuming the police are good and assuming the police are on their side, but the reality is that black people don't have that luxury in America.
Justice for Jonathan.
Also attending, the families of other black victims of police brutality.
I stand in solidarity with this family because it mimics my case, and this is personal to me. They have doubled back and claimed another life by a chokehold. That's why we have to fight for justice.
Yes, ma'am.
In Washington, Democratic senators knelt in silence for 8 minutes and 46 seconds. The length of time Floyd, a black man, was pinned under a white police officer's knee before he died.
You see how long it was to have that knee on his neck.
Democrats in Congress have proposed sweeping legislation to overhaul U.S. police oversight that would include banning chokeholds.
Today, this moment of national anguish is being transformed into a movement of national action as Americans from across the country peacefully protest to demand an end to injustice. Today, with the Justice in Policing Act, the Congress is standing with those fighting for justice and taking action.
Floyd's family and friends will hold a private funeral service on Tuesday in Houston to remember the life of the man who, in death, has become an international symbol of injustice.
DW reporter Stacey Bivens is following this story for us. Hi, Stacey. We've seen this outpouring of grief for George Floyd. We heard there that he'll be buried in Houston today. Do you think we're going to see the same types of crowds turning out for this?
I think today is a private moment. This is for the family. The past few days, we've seen people come out and collectively grieve, to come out and support the family, and to show sympathy for a man that they watched die under the weight of police. But today, he's going to be laid to rest next to his mother and surrounded by family and friends.
Let's talk about what happens next as we look at these moments of mourning. We've seen the Democrats, we saw in our report there, are looking at legislation at this point to tackle police culture, to tackle police misconduct. How do you change police culture? Because that is a big task.
The biggest hurdle is the police union. They are extremely, extremely powerful. They have a lot of money. Their coffers come from membership dues, and so they're able to pay to essentially block legislation, to keep their police powers in order to influence elections, in order to get certain people elected, and in order to, in some cases, get bad cops rehired. So what's happening in Congress is important because this means that they are listening or attempting to listen to the protesters. So what they're proposing would make chokeholds illegal, so what killed Eric Gardner and what killed George Floyd, no-knock warrants, which is how Breonna Taylor, we've heard her name shouted at protest, was killed. And they would also make a registry so that we can keep track of bad cops. And so when one is fired in one district, they can't get hired in another.
Where has the president, Donald Trump, been in all of this? Because a lot of people have been looking to the White House for leadership, perhaps some signs to unite the country, and we haven't heard that coming from the White House. So where has he been?
That's a great question. He's been sequestered behind that wall he recently built around the White House. I think it's easier to talk about what he hasn't done. He hasn't met with Black Lives Matter organizers. He hasn't met with civil rights leaders. He hasn't met privately with George Floyd's family. But what he has done is retweeted character assassinations about George Floyd on Twitter that came from conservative commentators. And he also paraded a bunch of middle-aged white men on the Sunday morning talk shows to say that systematic racism in the police departments do not exist. Now, there's talk that he might hold some kind of a talk in order to talk about civil rights and bringing the nation together. But if he does that, he's waited a long time. Traditionally, presidents get out in front of something like this to bring the nation together. But as you said, he's been absent.
DW reporter Stacey Bivens, thank you.